Okay, I just saw this video from AndyPants, and he's accusing Skill Up and Bellular and Actman of being woke. And I think this kind of misunderstands the situation because, in my opinion, it's more accurate to say that they are a bit closer to traditional media, or at least what traditional media used to be, where there's a potential conflict of interest. Now, these are three people who I think they look at their careers in a very business oriented way. So they get funding from certain places and they have to worry about how their businesses are funded and what they can say can compromise that. And it's not about specifically having ideological ideas. So a lot of Actman's opinions, if you pay attention to them, he kind of has fair weather opinions. So sometimes he'll just look at Reddit and see what the popular opinion is and parrot it. So, and they do that because they're interested in trying to make money. You know, it's not about supporting a specific ideology or something. And a lot of people love confirmation bias. So you'll tend to see confirmation bias oriented, like that'll be the goal a lot of times. So of course they're going to bash Concord to some degree because everyone's bashing Concord, and obviously they're not going to contribute anything new when they're talking about Concord because they're just trying to parrot the popular opinion. They're trying to get the clicks from people who want their own opinions affirmed. And so that's one side of their business. There's other YouTubers like Young Yeah, who is infamous for also kind of running a YouTube channel like this. And, you know, that's different than giving your personal opinion and then just accepting the consequences of that. So, like, I have nothing to lose. I tend to just give my opinion. I've been blasted a few times already, and to me it doesn't matter. I personally would rather be sincere. I think even people saying I'm stupid or I have a stupid hot take, it gives me an opportunity to look into something and possibly develop a better opinion and think about stuff and things. You know, all of this can be a learning experience if you're open to it. And money can contaminate that side of it. Like, that's a side of being sincere that I think is valuable and important for someone making videos themselves. Like, it's a way to personally benefit and grow as an individual yourself who makes things. Let alone that sincerity can also benefit the audience, depending. So what I think this causes this issue, since their goal is to make money, and I'm not mad they want to make money. They're running businesses, right? So this can end up causing a conflict of interest with consumer advocacy and representing consumer interests and consumer needs, because there's the side of video games as a product versus video games as an art form. And so they should be advocating for consumers on the video games as a product side, at the very least, if they're functioning as a form of press. It's healthier for the general market if they do that. So what ends up being an issue is they'll get money from advertising on some level. So examples of that are YouTube ad revenue, but also company sponsorships. So if they do ad reads, And if they make themselves appear bad to corporations in some kind of way, there is a risk of compromising monetization like that. I think that these individuals might also do crowdfunding on some degree, but I haven't looked into it too much. And I'm pretty sure they do merch and stuff on some level. And when you're getting money from your audience, so it can be general crowdfunding, so like a Patreon, but there's also YouTube memberships and super chats and stuff. But there's also merchandising, it that you're kind of giving to your audience back and forth. So you are more likely to be in a consumer's interest if you are primarily funded by the consumer side versus the corporate advertising side. So it's usually better, if you're worried about money, to try to have your income come from your audience more. That's not to say there isn't a risk of bias, but it's easier to be sincere because your audience isn't, it's more like decentralized. It's a collective group of people. Corporations are more like a concentrated, it's kind of like being an individual. So it's more of a risk of representing a very narrow perspective. There are aspects to large businesses that are reminiscent of being an individual, and speech and stuff like that. That gets a little complicated. That's why there's all kinds of laws relating to politics and stuff that kind of limit businesses' ability to influence politics, but doesn't outright prevent big business from interacting with politics. All of this stuff gets really, really complicated. But my main point is that if they're getting enough funding from the corporate side, then obviously since they're worried about these being businesses, then they're going to have bias a lot more towards the corporate side. If they're getting enough funding from the audience side and they're willing to burn the corporate bridge and take that financial hit, then they're more likely to be consumer advocacy groups. Now, the YouTubers he names as being positive, he gets to that towards the end of his video. I'm not totally familiar with them. I can't account for him personally, but I think these are people who aren't corporate side. Certainly Synthetic Man is like blacklisted in some capacity because he's a very, very controversial figure. And Short Fat Otaku, whatever you think of him, has mainly focused on the sort of audience funded side. So I can't say for sure about how the other two at the top get funding or whatever, but I'm going to guess it's audience funding. So, not to say that any of these people are disingenuous, not to say that monetization may dictate what their actual opinions are, but you are much less likely to shill for the bigger corporations if you are not being funded by the bigger corporations. These are people who don't have that specific conflict of interest. I at least partially assume, regardless of what you may think of them on an individual level. I think it's funny that he thinks of Short Fat Otaku as countercultural, though, when he's openly defended Brianna Wu. So take that with whatever grain of salt.